Hello everybody, welcome back to Norwich Talk for another transfer rumour video. Shane Duffy, the Republic of Ireland international, is the latest to be linked to Norwich City. This story comes from Alan Nixon and is now being run by the Pink and possibly others. I've only seen the Pink running it so far, but Norwich City are allegedly looking to pick him up on a free transfer as his deal with Fulham expires. This is a transfer that has got me feeling much like the Ashley Barnes one. I think that's kind of the opinion of Norwich City fans, especially on Twitter at the moment. One where it very much feels like low risk, high reward. Again, one that might have seemed, a bit more exciting if we already had a bank of other slightly more flash, however you define that, transfers completed already. But off the bat, yeah, not bad. I'll absolutely take it. As we say, it's on a free. It's very high reward if it goes well. In that, if Norwich City pick up the Shane Duffy we've seen, since before he stopped really playing as regularly as what he did, then they've got themselves a pretty decent centre back. 31 years old as well it's not old. I mean, it's not young. It's no spring chicken, but you kind of tend to think that perhaps it's towards the latter end of a centre back's peak years. So could be worse, couldn't it? But diving into the facts, as we always do, 31 years old. He is a Republic of Ireland international. He's 6'4", so he is somewhat of a giant, which I remember very vividly from the times that I've seen him playing at Carrow Road, that he is just massive. He's a centre-back natively. And he's leaving Fulham on a free transfer after his loan move there turned permanent in, I think it was January or February of 2023, after a lengthy period at Brighton. I think we all know him from his time at Brighton as well as Blackburn, don't we? He made 140 appearances for Brighton before going out on loan a couple of times in that spell. I think there was 2 years between those loan spells, one to Celtic and one to Fulham. He scored 9 goals for Brighton, 7 in 4 Premier League seasons, which, I mean, is more prolific than our centre backs. I think Hanley scored 4 or 5. That's just a stat, not that I really think it's particularly relevant to him as a footballer. But 9 goals is decent, isn't it, for a centre back? He finished second place with Brighton under Chris Hughton in 2016-17 season. He's made 55 appearances for the Republic of Ireland, and he played because I was looking for sort of monumental fixtures that he's been a part of, and I think perhaps the biggest one would be, and I say this as an Englishman who's not particularly clued up on sort of Irish football and how they've done internationally, but he played and kept a clean sheet against Italy in 2016 at the Euros, that game where Wes Uhan crossed the ball in for Robbie Brady. So, as far as playing career-wise goes, he's had a fairly decent career. What I think in terms of what I'm going to do for this video is I want to compare him to Grant Hanley and Ben Gibson. Not so much Big Andy, because I genuinely don't think he'll be here. Because Norwich City need to fund transfers, and if it's him that they're rejecting bids for in January, it's, I don't know, fairly obviously going to be him who funds the transfers going forward into the summer. But Shane Duffy is a footballer who has played in the Premier League for, a number of years now, as we know, whereas Ben Gibson and Grant Hanley have sort of dipped in and out with Norwich and other clubs, Middlesbrough for Ben Gibson. So what I've done is I've got their Premier League appearances and I'm comparing Premier League stats, and I know we're in the Championship, but I feel like it's a fair thing to do because playing at the same level, slightly different teams, we know this, and Brighton, for example, have had an upwards trajectory, which is why Shane Duffy's not there, is they've replaced him and they've sort of, pardon me, outgrown him is exactly what happened, whereas Norwich City haven't done that with Hanley and Gibson. But in terms of comparison, I think it makes for interesting reading. So yeah, we'll get into that. If you think that's redundant, then, click off the video now. But we'll start with that. So, Shane Duffy in the Premier League made 119 Premier League appearances. Grant Hanley made 79. Ben Gibson made 67. So that's what we're playing with. What I thought was really interesting is that Shane Duffy has an 80% pass completion, and that's over 4,400 passes in the Premier League. So that's around or sorry, no, 36.7% of those are forward passes. And immediately my brain went to, right, well, how is he on the ball? What are his passing stats like? Are they going to be significantly better than what we currently have? Are they going to be worse? And my brain immediately went to better. But looking at this, I mean, fairly similar. So Grant Hanley has the same accuracy from 2,500 passes, so almost kind of half less, and 38% of those passes are forward. So in terms of ball progression, it seems quite similar. Ben Gibson has 83% pass accuracy from 3,000 passes, and 41.6 of those are forward. I remember in his first season, Ben Gibson had all those sort of glorious stats, didn't he, about being a real progressor of the ball. So in terms of passing, it's not like Shane Duffy comes in and knocks everyone else off the park. He's played a lot more passes, and one thing that I think is really positive is that he played under Graham Potter, and I'm sure that really developed his game. I mean, we saw it when we sort of saw him at Carrow Road when he was playing with Dan Burn, and for Brighton that he didn't look that bad on the ball. I think sometimes he has a little bit of a reputation as being a little bit clumsy, whereas our current centre backs also have that reputation. So you kind of immediately go, right, well, is he a massive improvement? But again, experience, etc., etc., free transfer. It's not like it's an unproven regression. If anything, this is a proven player in English football in the Premier League as well. This is proven quality, which again for free, you'll absolutely take it. I don't really see any reason to complain about this. The Norwich City model has always been, there are no real sort of stupid wages, so you don't have to sit there and think that he's going to be financially crippling the club by playing for us. So yeah, I'm kind of under the impression of it's a fairly decent signing, to be anyway. Ben Gibson has been dispossessed 10 times in the Premier League. Shane Duffy 7 times, and Grant Hanley 4 times. So as far as getting dispossessed and then I think leading to goals, it was like once or twice for Duffy. Being dispossessed, which in this Norwich City team, the word dispossessed for me stuck out, because I thought, right, what do we get frustrated at our centre backs for? For the most part, it's shooting themselves in the foot and being a bit clumsy. It's interesting that his stats are not better than Hanley's; they're worse, but slightly better than Gibson's. So it's not like we're gonna see this, massive improvement in that regard. I hope that makes sense. I'm kind of looking at these stats and thinking it's the Premier League, but we're in the Championship. But stick with me. One thing that I do think is very interesting is that Shane Duffy made 739 clearances in the Premier League. Ben Gibson 373, Hanley 446. So again, defensively a lot more active, again playing arguably in better teams, and again to continue that theme of interesting stats, you've got aerial battles 1, Shane Duffy 526, Ben Gibson 116, Hanley 189. Now this for me it is significant. We talk about these other stats, and I mentioned how perhaps there isn't going to be significant change. One thing I've always thought, especially with Ben Gibson, is that our centre backs aren't particularly great in the air. I think Hanley is fairly decent at winning his headers, but I've never looked at either of them and thought, wow, they are a commanding presence in the air. Whereas Shane Duffy, as the stats clearly point towards, again, take it with a pinch of salt, more games, but his numbers are significantly better in that regard. I think that kind of presence has been missing from Norwich's team for a while, and if he comes in and plays regularly and proves to be a lot better in the air, it'll feel new. Like a lot of teams have, aerially commanding centre backs, but I don't think we have for a while. So to see that change, I think will feel really refreshing and necessary. And playing in a Championship league that's very physical, and not every team does. A lot of teams do keep the ball down and play football, but for teams that will hoof the ball in the air, it's absolutely vital. And the interesting thing as well, again, is that just Hanley has made more tackles and interceptions than Shane Duffy in the Premier League. So in terms of on the floor, perhaps, not significantly better than what we've currently got, but it's a free transfer. In terms of what I have left on Shane Duffy, I feel like is a tough player to really sort of rev up about and get people excited about, which, no offense to him, but it's a 31-year-old, very experienced centre back. It's not some flash new young player who we're going to see develop and grow at Norwich and make us millions of pounds, and that's always tough when we've been kind of used to that. But I think this is a good signing. My notes here in front of me in terms of wrapping the video up is he can't be worse than what we've got, and he's free. He's captained Ireland, so experience-wise, again, in this Norwich City squad, where, as Stuart has stated, we're trying to rebuild the culture. Essentially, we're trying to get experienced leaders in. I mean, he absolutely fits the bill. And the last question I was going to ask you, watching is his age an issue for me? No, not really, but to loop back to what I said at the beginning of the video is I think we need to see some of those marquee signings, not, 10, 12, 50 million pounds, etc. But some of those players that perhaps are, I'd say around 26, 25 and under, ones where you can see maybe perhaps a clear development path at Norwich City, and the idea that they might go and make us a few million to continue this self-sustaining model. Someone like Shane Duffy isn't necessarily going to support that financially, but experience and helping those around him. A former teammate of Grant Hanley at Blackburn, and played in the international team with Andrew Omobamidele, so hopefully they've had good things to say. But yeah, it's been an interesting video, this one, because, as I said, it's difficult to sit here and get really excited about someone like Shane Duffy, but for me, a safe but fair signing, a position that Norwich City have been crying out for in terms of just additional bodies, over the past however long. I think Ozan Kabak was the last centre-back we signed, and that didn't go great, did it? So it'd just be nice to see a centre-back who is decent, that it isn't sort of Andrew Omobamidele, because I personally believe he won't be here for the start of the season, and then Jakob Sorensen isn't an option. Hanley and Gibson, we've had endless discussions about them, haven't we? But yeah, that is all for this video. I hope those stats were of interest to you. Your thoughts, I'd love to know them in the comments down below. If you want to leave a thumbs up too, that'll be much appreciated. Subscribe too if you fancy it, and I'll see you again very, very soon.